Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Sweet and Sour Soccer, and welcome back to Week 18 of Premier League predictions. Guys, it was actually James that was supposed to be doing this video today, but he forgot. So if you could do me a massive favour, drop in the comments, James is a fraud. And if you're new here, whilst you're there, hit that subscribe button. And all of you, please do hit that like button as well. And let's waste no more time. Let's get into these predictions. And we're going to start off with West Ham taking on Brentford. And this is going to be a really interesting game because there's starting to be some pressure mounting on David Moyes. You just wonder, how long will the board give him? You know, back-to-back European seasons. They're still technically in Europe as well. Is he going to be allowed one not-so-good season? And what's interesting is Moyes continues to talk about they aren't in a relegation battle. He talks about the fact that they've got more than enough to get out of it and turn it around and go on to challenge for Europe this year. I think he needs to be a bit more realistic at the moment. I do think they've got too good a team to go down, but at the same time, I don't think that really exists in the Premier League, especially when, you know, a lot of teams are going to have money to go out and spend in January, improve their team. I think he does have to maybe think about, you know, are West Ham realistically in that relegation scrap? Brentford, on the other hand, definitely are in the relegation scrap. And although there is a bit of uncertainty when it comes to Ivan Toney, I think they'll be really pleased again, you know, with what they did against Spurs. To be honest, unlucky not to get the win. They're probably a little bit disappointed that they didn't hold out. But, you know, they look really good, a really good outfit. And especially at home, they tend to be, you know, a really hard team to beat. Of course, they are away from home this time, though. And I think for that reason, I'm going to go for the points to be shared. I'm going to go for a 1-1 in this fixture. We move on now to Liverpool, who take on Leicester. And, well, let's start off with Leicester, actually, because I think what's really interesting is, you know, things have got a bit more gloomy for Leicester after the return of the Premier League. Obviously, they finished before the World Cup, building some real momentum, some talk even of whether they'd be able to push on a European push, and then just 1 week later, they get, you know, obviously 1 week into the return of the Premier League, they get absolutely decimated by Newcastle, by far the second best team in that fixture. And you just start to wonder now, is the pressure going to start mounting on another manager, Brendan Rodgers, because obviously he was under pressure before the good form hit. Liverpool, on the other hand, they you know, got a very good win against Aston Villa. A little bit of scrutiny again under Darwin Núñez. I just wonder personally whether he's kind of joined Liverpool just one season too early, but obviously Liverpool wanted to get it done. You do wonder whether they'd be better maybe choosing Firmino to lead the line, letting him come off the bench, getting a bit of the eyes off him, because I do think there's a complete player there, almost. It is just that finishing, isn't it? And if he gets that finishing, I think that's what makes him that complete player. But obviously a very young player, and I think he does need a bit more time. I think because this is at Anfield, I do only see it going one way, and I'm going to go 2-0 to Liverpool. Let's move on to my club now, taking on Manchester United. And it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty at all, but it was a last-minute winner against Everton. And it was something which, you know, gave the whole of the club, the fans, the players, the new manager, everyone that positive start that we needed under, you know, the new regime. And I think going to Molineux, that will mean there's some confidence. But coming up against the Manchester United team, who I felt looked really impressive, the return of the Premier League, Marcus Rashford on some fine form. And it just feels everything starting to click under Ten Hag. And obviously they've got rid of their Ronaldo problem now as well. Unfortunately for United, they lost out on the Gakpo signing. That's a bit of a kick in the teeth for them. But I don't think, obviously, that's going to have any effect on what's going to happen with this fixture. I am quite hopeful that Wolves are going to put a good, a good display on. I'm not confident, though, that we're going to get anything from this, because I do think United look quite strong at the moment. I do think Ten Hag is starting to get things clicking. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 scoreline to the away team. I think United just get the win, but I do think it's going to be an actual good game, and it's for the first time I'm actually looking forward to seeing some football at Molineux, so that's certainly that. We now come on to City now, the other side of Manchester, who take on Everton. And City, it's going to be, you know, let's just be clear here. They just, they've come back with some bang, didn't they? Everyone was talking about Haaland, whether he was just going to pick up where he left off. Well, he answered those questions straight away. Yes, he had a month of not playing. but he's come back, banged 2 goals. Man City just looked dominant, didn't they? And they're coming up against an Everton team that just don't have much confidence at all at the moment. I really do wonder with Frank Lampard, you know, you look at the fixtures he's got coming up, especially in this game against City. Do you just try and just get a point here? Do you be smart? We know that Everton at the start of the season were very strong defensively. They were hard to break down. That seems to have been lost now. Do you be sensible here? Do you try and just go 5 at the back, play 2 defensive midfielders and, you know, just really try and grind out a 0-0 draw or even just try and nick a goal just to get some confidence into this team? You know, even going to City and getting a draw would be a massive, massive result, especially a game where they're really going to have to fight to get that point. Realistically, though, I've got to be honest, Everton fans, I don't see you getting that point. I think City just look impeccable at the moment. I think they're going to be on some kind of side of domination this second half of the season as they look to close the gap on Arsenal. And I do think because of that, I'm going to go for a 3-1 City win. I'm going to give Everton a goal, which might be a little generous, but I'm going to be kind. Fulham now taking on Southampton, and Southampton, new manager, but I think they need more than that if they're going to survive in the Premier League this season. I think we're going to have to see some additions being made in January, and not just you know, you look at the way that they did the transfer business like in the last transfer window. They went for young signings, players, in my opinion, might be good in 3-4 years' time, and they might be able to sell on for a lot more money, but for now and surviving in the Premier League, it hasn't really worked. And I do think the new manager is going to need backing, and he's going to need some experienced head to come in, which I think Southampton and the ownership will do. It's obviously a new ownership who seem keen to invest, and I think they will in January. So it'll be interesting to see what signings are made. Fulham are another team that has spoke about, you know, making some signings in the transfer window and improving certain areas of the squad. But they're going on really nicely. And I think for them, one of the main things will be to keep Alexander Mitrovic as well. I wonder if some other clubs will come in trying to basically vulture him away almost. This is going to be a really interesting game. I'm going to narrowly give it to the home team now, just because I think Fulham at home, I just fancy them to just edge it over Southampton at the moment. And I just don't see things improving for Southampton until a couple of signings are perhaps made. So I am going to give it to Fulham, and I'm going to go 1-0 in this game. Let's move on to Bournemouth now, taking on Crystal Palace. And this is going to be a tight game, to be honest, when I'm thinking this through, because Bournemouth at home, and Bournemouth, interestingly, as we know, new ownership, they've said that they're going to be keen to invest in the January transfer window. Bournemouth are one of the clubs I've got an eye on. I just wonder if they're going to be one of those teams that had that period, didn't they, where they performed well. I'm just wondering whether they're going to be one of those teams which you look at that might drop off in the second half of the season. But they come up against a Palace team who, again, results are a bit of a mixed bag. You never know which Palace is going to turn up. And I think Palace, when they turn up at their full best, they're a really hard team to get anything against. You know, the players that I'm thinking of, Zaha, who obviously only has 6 months left on his contract, but you've got the likes of Lassie as well. You know, you've got a lot of players in there that add some real excitement to this Crystal Palace team, and which is something you wouldn't have said about Palace a couple of years ago. You almost felt there were a one-man band in Zaha, and that's really where the excitement ended. You just wouldn't say that about Palace now. I think it's going to be a really good competitive game, and I'm going to go for a draw. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw in this fixture. Move on now to Newcastle United taking on Leeds, and Newcastle. Questions about them, wasn't there? Whether they're going to just, you know, whether they'd be able to come back with the same momentum. They've got a really impressive win against Leicester. Obviously, things started really well for them, where they're kind of helped out by Leicester with individual mistakes. And obviously, early on in the game, giving away a stupid penalty. But to be fair to Newcastle, that after that, they just looked really, really good. And what Eddie Howe is doing with that team, quite frankly, is incredible. And we probably expect some more signings to be made in January just to make that team even stronger. They've obviously got the likes of St. Maximin to come back. Isaac, who was a big signing. We've seen, not seen much of him, but what we have seen of him, he did look impressive. Of course, we've got Isaac to come back as well for Newcastle United. So I really do see them pushing on even more so in the second half of the season, challenging for those top 4 places. Big questions over Leeds United. Again, especially with Jesse Marsch. Are they going to be stuck in another relegation battle the second half of this season? Is Jesse Marsch going to be the one to lead them? Well, it's interesting because if you listen to any transfer business that is being suggested, it looks like Leeds might be going into the market for another player that has played under Jesse Marsch previously, which kind of suggests maybe they are going to stick with him. But who knows? Obviously, things can change very quickly. I do have to give this, though, to the home team. I'm going to go for Newcastle, especially with it being at St. James's Park. They're a really hard team to beat in general, but especially at home. And I think for that reason, I think it's going to be a really competitive game. I am going to give it 2-1 in this one. I think both teams do score. Let's move on to Brighton now, taking on Arsenal. And Arsenal, they returned again. Another team which had some questions around them. How are they going to return? Well, they returned quite impressively. And a lot of eyes were on Eddie Nketiah. How is he going to make up for the absence of Jesus? Well, I think he made up for it quite well, to be honest. Obviously, he scored, which was something that Jesus didn't really do in the previous, was it 8 games before he actually got injured? And I think when you also look at it as well, I think he added something a little bit different. I thought he was really intelligent in the goal that he got as well. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how Eddie Nketiah gets on. Now he's been given this period of time where he will be the one leading the line. And I don't think Arsenal are going to suffer too much without Jesus anyway, because you've got goals coming from all over the pitch. Obviously, even players like Xhaka have been contributing. But of course, you've got the likes of Saka, who played absolutely brilliantly last game week. You've got Martinelli, obviously can add in the goals. You've got Odegaard. So I really don't think they're going to suffer too much without the loss of Jesus, if I'm being honest. But this is going to be a difficult game because they come up against a Brighton team who, for me, look really impressive, actually. And coming to the Amex is never an easy game. I think this is going to be a good battle. And I think, and there was a lot of questions whether Brighton would be able to continue with what they were doing. Obviously, the loss of Graham Potter earlier on in the season. I mean, if the way that they've come back after this World Cup, if they continue like that, they're going to have no problems at all this season and could be genuine European contenders come the end of the season. Do you know what? I think this is one where I'm going to throw in a bit of a shock result, to be honest. It might not be too much of a shot, but I'm going to give it as a 1-1 draw. I think I've gone for a few 1-1 draws, actually, in this games week. Right, I don't think this is going to be a 1-1 draw. I will give this one way or the other, but Spurs taking on Villa. And Spurs will probably be disappointed, but at the same time thankful that they got a point against Brentford. I think it's one of them, isn't it? At the start of the game, they wouldn't have been happy with a point against Brentford, but come full time, coming back from 2-0. Kane looked good as well. Obviously, we wondered how he was going to return after the disappointment of the World Cup with England. I feel he returned well. He looks sharp. He looks ready for business. Maybe looks ready to try and win something with this Spurs team as well. Aston Villa are an interesting one. I don't think they've quite got going under Unai Emery yet. I think, and again, another team which will be busy in the January window. You could definitely see the changes he's trying to make, but maybe just doesn't quite have the players to play the way that he wants. I know they've already been linked with a host of potential names from Villarreal for obviously good reasons, because that's where Emery come from. So I do feel January is going to be interesting, but obviously they've got a couple of games before that happens, and one of them being going away to Spurs. This is a hard one to predict. I think I'm just going to edge towards Spurs, and I think I'm going to go for a 1-0 scoreline. I'm going to go 1-0 for that one, even I'm not confident in that prediction. We'll move on to Forest now, taking on Chelsea. And Forest, I think, they probably would have wanted to come back with a bit more of a fight than they did against United. And it's not getting any easier. They're coming up against a Chelsea team who looks a bit better, didn't they, on the return to football? Obviously, questions being asked of Graham Potter before the World Cup, but they looked good. Players like Mason Mount looked good. Havertz looked on it as well. And then maybe Potter's just had a bit of time to work things out, even though a lot of those players would have been away at the World Cup. He's maybe been able to work with some of the others and just work a bit more on what he wants to do with this team that he's got, even if it's not perhaps the players that he would perhaps want to do what he typically would do. I think he is going to have to change the way he's playing for the time being, or likes to play with the players that he's got at the club. But it does looks like, it looks like it's going to work. Forest, on the other hand, had a pretty impressive run up really in terms of winning the Carabao Cup. You also look at a couple of pre-season, I'd say pre-season as World Cup pre-season matches that they had. You know, they looked good, looked like they were going to come back with some menace. I suppose might be being a little harsh, judging them too much, because that United team did look good. But at the moment, they're very much in that relegation battle. And we've already been told by Steve Cooper to expect some January signings, but of course, not as many as the previous window. Forest are at home, but I am going to give it to Chelsea, and I am going to give it a 2-0 to Chelsea in that prediction. And guys, that is the Premier League predictions done for this week. Do let me know your predictions, as always, in the comments. And if you have enjoyed the video, as always, do me a massive favour, hit that like button. Please subscribe to the channel, and hopefully we catch you on the next video. We've also got a watch along coming this week, so look out for that. Take care. Goodbye.